What's in store for you? What do you got coming up?
Coming up right now is heading to Africa in mid-February. So me and several people I know adopt and sponsor orphaned elephants. And I'm going there to visit as many adoptees as I can visit.
Do they wind up sending you pictures, or do they just send you emails saying, hey, here's how your adopted elephant is doing?
You get updates all the time.
That's pretty cool. That's a great Christmas gift. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome to YHEA FOO. I'm Jalindo Foo, and I'm here with brother Anthony Foo today, and he's back joining us, and he's going to share some of his knowledge. How you doing, brother Anthony?
Cool. Fantastic. Went a wonderful kayak paddle on Lake Michigan today in the fog. Beautiful. Snow all over the beaches and lots of ice all over the rocks. And it was quite invigorating.
It's a little cooler over there. Here in California, it's about 65 today.
We have not seen the sun here in weeks and won't see it for another couple of weeks.
I remember that. I remember that well.
That's right.
So let's get the show going. I want to hear what's new with you. What do you got? What's in store for you? What do you got coming up?
What's new? So the biggest thing coming up right now is heading to Africa in mid-February for various reasons. One, to visit. So me and several people I know adopt and sponsor orphaned elephants, Wildlife Trust. And I'm going there to visit as many adoptees as I can visit and support the cause on the ground over there.
So this whole time that you've adopted these elephants and you've been here, and do they wind up sending you pictures, or do they just send you emails saying, hey, here's how your adopted elephant is doing?
You get updates all the time. All the time. Right. It's so enriching to me to read about all my little babies. It's just fantastic. It really is. And so this is Kenya, by the way. So I'm going to Kenya first.
So do you sponsor these elephants? Is that how it works? Is it like you go to a website and you go, hey, I'd like to sponsor a baby elephant, and then you just donate every month?
So yeah, it's a yearly donation.
Okay.
Yes, basically that's how it works. You go to the Sheldrick Wildlife Trust website.
Wait, what's it called?
Sheldrick Wildlife Trust. And I can send you the link.
Send me that, and I'll put that on the Instagram so that people, if they're interested in that, because that's pretty cool. That's a great Christmas gift.
It is a wonderful Christmas gift, and that's how it all started. I received an elephant as a Christmas gift, and then from there, it has blossomed into 20 elephants, a giraffe, a rhinoceros, and a few other farm sanctuaries.
Yes. All right. That's awesome.
Yeah. And it's really wonderful because, my new grandniece, who just turned a year a couple months ago, my sister-in-law, Karen, bought her an elephant when she was born. And so they'll be growing up together.
Oh, that's awesome.
Pretty cool.
That is cool. That's cool. Good. Then you'll be able to go and see all these adopted animals. Yes. when you go out there, try to do your best to see as many as possible. That is awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we'll be going down to the coast as well. I'm traveling with a friend, and I'm a scuba diver. So I'll get a chance to scuba dive for a couple of days. And it's the tail end of the whale shark season. So hopefully I'll get a lifer seeing whale sharks. That would be really cool as well. And then from there, going over to Rwanda, I did some work online with a guy who runs a community project a couple hours north of Kigali. And so his name is Greg, a fantastic project called Red Rocks. I'll send you that link as well. A very interesting project. And I'm going to get this opportunity to go out with crews of his. He works with community, works with various people, all conservation-minded work. And community investment, giving people livelihoods, and also going to be going on a gorilla trek in Uganda.
Whoa! And what does that entail? How do you go on a gorilla trek? What is that?
Greg, my friend over there, is setting this up for me. You do have to pay a fee. So to see gorillas for 1 hour, you have to get a permit for $700 US. But it goes to very, very well-intentioned projects, meaning so the actual guides on these gorilla treks used to be the poachers of these gorillas. So the governments, Uganda, the Congo, Rwanda, implemented a project to basically outpay the cost of poaching with fees to protect the gorillas.
That's brilliant. Brilliant.
these people on the ground already knew the signs of the gorillas, where they are, the areas that they are in, and know how to find them. Now they're paying them to teach people about the gorillas and conserve their habitat, and or people pay the money to actually go and get these experiences. You can get a longer experience. It'll cost you more, but they're available as well. So
that's smart to go and do, because then because if you don't use them, then you're going to be competing with them, and they're going to continue poaching. And the only reason they're poaching is because they need money.
Exactly.
So that's all you got to go and do.
It is a brilliant scheme and a brilliant strategy to protect wildlife.
They should do the same thing somehow with like the drug cartels, because that's the reason that they're doing it, right?
Like, you mean undermine the...
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't been right through, but you pay them to become distributors. Illegal.
Drug tours?
Yeah, or something.
Go to Colombia and do like a cocaine tour or something like that.
Go to the poppy fields. And then they'll stop bringing those drugs in. If you're really that concerned about it, then go and pay them the money. Then they're not going to go and make drugs anymore. They subsidize the farmers here in the country, you know. You go and subsidize the drug dealers.
Economically, you would have a big enough tourism market to go down there and visit to do their drugs there, instead of just paying a mule or a runner to bring them up
here. There you go. Again,
I'm not sure if the model is economically feasible.
I didn't do a disclaimer at the top. I'm not an expert on anything that I'm spewing. And I think in this particular science, he's not an expert on this either, what we're spitballing. So
I'm not going to say anything about my history with drugs.
Me either.
Oh, I know what I know. I'm not going to incriminate myself here.
Oh my gosh. That's wild. That's great. That's awesome that they go and they do that though.
And I think really, yes, there's ecotourism all around the world these days, but really, I think that's a really interesting and novel way to flip it, you know, to get these people sustainably living, doing a lot of the same things they were doing, except, you know, now this will be sustainable into the future, when if you killed all the gorillas, then you have no more livelihood.
Right.
You know, saving the trees. You know, I've had an eco-tour project in Brazil, and I would, to the locals, explain that this tree will make you more money in 3 decades than chopping it down right here. You just have to be patient.
Right.
And I understand people want money right now in their pocket, but if you get rid of all the trees, then there's no more money to be made.
Yeah.
It's a very short-sighted type of... It's kind of like our government.
Yeah.
Very short-sighted in all the projects, or a lot of the projects that they implement.
Yeah. Yep. Very much so. Yeah. You're killing your source. So you're not going to be able to make any money anyways. Well, that kind of goes into the whole thing about, you know, you going to Africa, and you've traveled. How many countries have you been to?
After this trip, 69 or 70.
Okay. So you've done a lot more traveling than I have, or any of the other Jalindos. And I just want to get your perspective on, you know, what happens here in the United States right now, and what's happening around the rest of the world as far as happiness. Mm-hmm. Are people more happy around the rest of the world compared to the U.S., who, you know, we're one of the richest countries? We have everything, you know, at our fingertips.
It's an interesting question, and it's not an easy question to answer. There are happiness lists of the most happiest countries in the world every year that come out. For example, you know, and perpetually what tops those lists, and I don't know their full metric and formula and how they decide, whether they're just asking people, or, you know, how do you gauge one person's happiness, or a country's happiness for that matter. And perpetually the Scandinavian countries are at the top of the happiness scale.
Right.
And the United States is always somewhere in the mid-teens, 15, 16, 17. At times we've been in the low 20s. Last year we were 16. Now we're 15. I'm not sure what that means as well. So our countries overall, so why is the Scandinavian countries, why are those happy?
Or would it be happy? Are we saying maybe it should be less stress? Would that be a better barometer?
I think less stress, or maybe just content. Or
there we go. Yes, that's good.
Not necessarily like they're walking around like laughing all the time, happy.
Right.
I think satisfied with their condition.
There you go.
And what I know about those countries, and there's arguments out there, people, sociologists that say, well, it's because of this, it's because of that. But one thing I know, having traveled to those countries, is that they are taken care of. Their social programs are really progressive. Their education through university is taken care of. Their health care is all socialized and they're taken care of. With that, they have no homeless people in the streets. And so their social programs are really forward. Now, they pay a shit ton of taxes, but they also have a government that they have confidence in, but also proves that confidence because they actually invest in the people. They're not just a bunch of like self-serving pieces of shit like most of the people we have in politics. And that's my opinion about our politicians. Not all of them. Right. But a lot of them are very self-serving and power hungry and greedy and stuff like that. And perhaps they're that way over there, but they actually do take care of their people quite well. And the social programs are just fantastic. And right. Conversations I've had in bars with people over there, I met a bartender and he's like, hey, if I needed some surgery and some issue, and he was maybe late 20s, early 30s today, and I couldn't work the rest of my life, like I would get that issue taken care of and I would be taken care of the rest of my life. That's it. Done. Like that's security. That is real security.
Yeah. And that, because I've always said that how much happier people would be around here. Like if you just want to be an artist that, and you want to be a painter or whatever, and you don't have to worry about, my retirement later or my health care, but yet I'm going to be a better person to my fellow man because I know that those are taken care of. Because from me, when I was growing up, it was always, does that job have benefits? And if it didn't, they'd be, well, you gotta take that other job that you don't want because it's got benefits. Yeah, but I really like this job. Yeah, but it doesn't have benefits. So you're miserable for the rest of your working career just because you want to go and have benefits. And then you're miserable around everybody else. And like your example of somebody that even though they can't work, technically for the rest of their life, but they're taken care of, they're going to want to then go and probably, I'm going to guess, do something to contribute back to whatever it is, volunteering something and not just sitting around. I mean,
those having traveled in those countries and spending time in those countries, that's the sense I get. They have, not that Americans aren't proud or Canadians aren't proud, but it seems to have turned from like the JFK era of don't ask what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country, to screw it. All these assholes are a bunch of criminals anyway. I'm going to get what's mine. Right. Well, I don't know. I'm going to just do what I need to do to survive and to get as much out of the system as possible because, whatever gaming the system is, people try to game it. Why? Because our politicians are gaming the system.
Right. Yeah.
So again, that's a vote of confidence in their cultures, but not confidence in our culture of those that are supposed to be leading us and being good examples of what it means to be an American when they're really piss poor examples of humans.
Right. Yeah.
But also, like, for example, I've traveled quite a bit and worked and lived in a lot of developing nations. And, I've lived quite a bit in Brazil and elsewhere around the world, Philippines. And I was in Cuba last year. And we had talked about this, I think, before that, for example, in Cuba, there is no homelessness. And Cuba's infant mortality rate is so low, it is not even listed as having infant mortality in the country listings. While the United States has one of the highest rates of infant mortality of any country, particularly industrialized countries. Wrap your brain around that. So when we want to like hammer Cuba for being communism and all this kind of stuff, it's a pretty track record when there's nobody on the street. Why? Because you get free housing, regardless of your condition. You always get free housing. Right. And you get an allotment of food and staples that allow you to eat. Now, there is a problem with upward mobility in that country.
There's a problem with that here too.
But there's a problem with that here too. And you know that and how you achieve upward mobility there and here is, you know, it's a different strategy, and it can be done here and there. But you have to work for it, and you have to know the right people, and you have to know the right strategies, and you have to get educated. And their education is free, obviously, because it's, you know, communist country. But what you make in Cuba, and I don't know if this is across the board in occupations there, but the producers, like when I was there, I was on a coffee plantation, I was on a tobacco plantation, and the government will take 90% of what you produce as a crop. And I don't know how they do that if you're like a tour guide, if they're taking 90% of your salary, or I don't know how that works with other occupations. With producers, like agriculture producers, they'll take 90% of their crop. You get to keep 10% of it that you can sell to tourists or whoever comes to your place, like on the side. And I had this discussion. There was a guy that I was traveling with from Georgia who was a business person, and he was like 90%. Oh my God, that's crazy. Well, let's just boil it down of what you actually keep here in the United States. Once you are taxed with whatever you make, your income tax, and then if you own a house, you get property tax, and then you buy food. And then if you have kids, you have to pay gasoline, you got to pay insurance and all these different things. So what do you actually take home after you have all these expenditures? And less than 10%. Right. So what are you banking actually?
Right.
So is it, you know, and I'm not arguing for communism or anything like that. We know. I
hear you.
I've traveled a lot in Eastern Europe as well, and it's a failed plan. And,
right.
And so, but I'm just saying, human beings are taken care of there.
But every single person. Something said about that. Yeah. Right. Exactly. I'm sorry for cutting you off.
No, and all medical care as well. But a doctor there, and I visited several medical clinics in villages and in the city. They basically make $200 a month, if that, 200 US.
Yeah. So that system is something I feel like study that to figure out a way to implement parts of that to make it work here in the States. I mean, there's something that's working. I'm not saying, become communist, but, communism.
Nor am I. There's
a reason, right? Idea. But there's a reason that, there's a solution there to go and study, to go and figure out.
There absolutely is something to be learned.
Yes,
there's no doubt about it. And look, we have a homeless problem in this country. They don't.
Right.
We still have kids. Right. Like I said, you look up infant mortality. We don't have a very good statistic with infant mortality in this country. They don't even make the list. So something's working over there. That's pretty damn good.
They're doing something right, for sure. So, and that's interesting. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And so getting back to the happiness thing, or and it depends on the metric you're using.
Right. Being content.
And I've traveled throughout the United States as well, quite a bit. And I've been to every state except Hawaii, just been in the airport in Hawaii, traveled obviously quite a bit around the world as well. And politics not even aside, it has not really mattered. The people I meet and have conversations, whether it's on the street or in the bar or wherever it happens to be, people are just people. And we all kind of want the same things. We want to be loved. We want good, solid relationships. We want to eat every day. We want a place to lay down.
Yeah. And you want to feel secure at night when you go and lay your head down.
Yeah, feel secure at night. And if those things are met, and I mentioned before a study, maybe not to you, but that was out a couple of years back, that once those things are met, so once you make enough money to meet those basic needs, there is no correlation with happiness and the amount of money a person makes. What means, boiling it down, you can make $1 million and be a miserable fucking cuss, or you can make 20 grand and have everything met and be the happiest person on the planet. So money does not buy you happiness. It's just it's a fallacy. And money and having shit and more shit does not buy you happiness. It doesn't mean you're more content than anybody else.
Right. Materialism.
Yeah, materialism is not a conduit to happiness. It's and another reason we know this as well is there are what we call the blue zones on the planet. Have you ever heard of this?
No.
So the blue zones are the longest lived populations on the planet. So they have the most centenarians, people that have lived past 100, these populations all around the planet. So Sardinia in Italy, Okinawa, village in Okinawa as well. Loma Linda, California, I forgot, they're the longest lived. And they've been studied. And one of the things so the people that have studied these groups, obviously like, why the hell are these people living so fucking long? And this formula is actually really quite simple. And here it goes. And here's what they've come down to. So here's the commonalities between all of these groups. Plant-based diet. They eat very little meat or no meat in their diets.
Okay.
Very active lifestyles and very solid relationships between family and friends, a network. And that's it. So it's not about making money. It's about being involved in the community and being valued in the community, having good relationships, eating a really decent diet, and
being active.
All
right, Brother Anthony, you and I we're going to live to be 100.
We're going to live 100 together. Exactly.
I guess I'm not retiring next year. I got to more money to go to 100.
Retire? Get the hell out of here.
Oh my God.
You kidding me? I retired basically, I graduated my undergrad and retired. That's basically what I did.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, you've been traveling, man. But you've been doing it. You're doing the thing. You're doing what you love. That's awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead. What were you going to say?
No, I was going to say I've always been an advocate of follow your bliss, and the money will show up.
Yes,
and
usually.
I heard something I think is very important in a yoga class that I took Wednesday morning. So everybody's living the dream. It just might not be their dream or your dream. And so the whole trick. So some people might look at you, Brother Bob, and go, wow, that dude's really living the dream, man. The guy's solid. He's a great guy. He's a really sweet guy, nice guy. He's doing what he loves. I would love to do that, right? So the trick is like to live the dream. I've always been obsessed with, in this short stint we have on this planet, doing what I want to do and fulfilling myself with what I want to experience. Right. And I've never worried about the money situation. Now, granted, and I've talked to many people with families, and I say, well, here's the deal. Oh my gosh, how'd you do everything you've done and whatever, travel all over the place. You've lived everywhere. You've done X, Y, and Z and so on. Gone several postgraduate degrees and all this kind of, and I always say, you decided to have kids and I decided not to.
Right.
And that's a big responsibility that I decided a long time ago. I really wasn't interested in having children. And so I don't have that responsibility. And so now I've actually gotten this, you don't know what it's like. You know, you're selfish because you never have your own kids. And I went, I'm selfish. I spent 20 years as a professor teaching your kids and taking care of your kids and teaching them about life and making sure that they were functional human beings in this global world, that, you know, this globe that we live on, and this global society is what I meant to say, that we live in. Who's more selfish? And I've taken care of the environments, done a lot of shit ton of conservation work around the planet, and have made friendships around the planet with people to make sure these things are intact when your kids are old enough to actually experience them. Who's more selfish? You that had your own kids, or me that is taking care of everything for your kids? Right.
Brilliant. That's good.
So everyone gets to choose.
Yes.
And that's it. You don't have any kids that you know of? I don't have any kids that I know. I'm joking. I know I don't have any kids.
Right.
But I've invested in my nieces and nephews and everybody else's children. Parents I don't even know. I have many students that are still friends, and we keep in contact and so on. So
it's good. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I would want you as when I was growing up and going to school, I would have wanted somebody like you as a professor because it would keep me engaged, you know. And I feel like all the stories that you share with me all the time about how you teach and your technique and how you interact with your students, it's like, holy cow, yeah. Because there's been a few teachers in my life that I remember that were really engaged like that were a lot of fun. And I remember having a teacher that I had, and I was trying to figure out, I forget what it was. It was one of the formulas. And I was like, okay, explain it to me this way. If I was a stunt man, and how fast do I got to be running? Oh, it was for physics. It wasn't for math. How fast do I run?
Was it Mr. Shea?
No. It was, okay. I can't remember who it was, but then we were figuring out how fast I have to be running when I go running through the window and where the crash pad has to be and how thick it has to be. So it made it really interesting.
That's hysterical.
So that was really cool. I really like that. Talking about, being content and these places that you've been where you're taken care of, whereas with here, and we've discussed this before too, with our health system, which isn't, you've said it is not a health system. It's what did you call it?
It's a reactionary sick care system.
Right.
You get sick, you go to the hospital instead of investing in preventative strategies so people don't have to go to the hospital.
Right.
I mean, there's some professions that do that, chiropractics, for example, and they're very progressive in trying to keep people healthy and giving them strategies to maintain their health so that they don't have to end up or, to stave off potential, hospital visits or doctor visits or whatever.
Because they want to go and they're more or less kind of rolling the dice, kind of hoping and praying. Hopefully you guys are going to be okay, but we'd rather roll the dice and see what the odds are. It's better to just go, instead of investing in you to live forever, it's better just to make these payments on these few people that are, the smaller percentage that are getting sick of all the pool money that's coming in from all the insurance, right? Is that how the profit's being made, would you say?
Well, absolutely. And by the insurance companies as well, but also by the pharmaceutical companies, for example, as well. I mean, look how many different invented diseases have shown up on TV since the Congress said that pharmaceutical companies can directly market to consumers on TV. All these people, this disease, you have this and this and that. That's why you see all those things. Yeah, because formerly you had to go to your doctor. Your doctor, said you have these kinds of symptoms, and they do all the diagnostics and go, okay, you have this, and then they would write you a prescription. Now, if you watch those commercials, they say, ask your doctor if you have X, Y, and Z, if you have these symptoms. All they wanted to do is they want to sell you more pharmaceutical shit. Instead of your doctor actually going, your diet sucks and get off your ass and move around a little bit. And that would be a preventative that would do you really, really well. And actually, most of all of the industrialized plagues, industrial country plagues that we're suffering from now, heart disease, hypertension, obesity, diabetes, many cancers, which, by the way, the United States leads in almost all of those, are foodborne illnesses. And what I mean by foodborne, not like some toxic thing like E. coli, contamination or something like that, or pesticides or herbicides or agrochemicals, not that, none of that. I'm talking about horrible diets that are consuming so much fucking meat relative to historical consumption of animal products. And we know all of those things that I mentioned are paper tigers and can be all changed and reversed with a plant-based diet.
And it goes back to what you said earlier about the blue, what was it? The blue dots or the blue?
Yeah, the blue dots. Yeah. Yep. So there is overwhelming, irrefutable evidence of what eating animal products will do in a human body. And it's horrific. And the problem is, it's like these diseases. So what used to kill people were infectious diseases. So the diseases that I just mentioned, hypertension and heart disease and all these kinds of things, cancers, those are chronic diseases. So those take decades to develop, or to develop to a point where they're going to be impacting your health. Where if you got cholera, 100 years ago, that could kill you in a week and a half. Or if you got something like that, an E. coli infection, you could be dead in 3 days. So infectious diseases were the killers when, 100 years ago. And now that we're inoculated, vaccinated, hygiene strategies, all this other kind of things that happened the last 100 years, now we're dying, now we're living older, and now we're dying of these chronic diseases, which are all, again, foodborne.
Right. So it makes sense to go with if you have a healthy diet, then you're not less chance of running into these issues for sure.
Absolutely. It's irrefutable. There's no need to consume an animal product.
Right.
There's no need. The human body does not need it. Everything we need. And I think we might have mentioned this before, but all of the nutrients that a cow eats that grows to 1,200 pounds, that a silverback gorilla eats 450 pounds, all the nutrients, calories, vitamins, everything they need, the protein that everybody's always worried about, which is a fucking idiocracy, is all in plants, including the protein.
Right. Because I was having people from our last episode, and they were saying, well, you can't eat, and you need to eat meat in order to get those proteins. But we discussed about how, and I just want you don't have to go deep into it because we discussed it before, but what you eat, your body is making those proteins.
And the carbohydrates.
You're not eating the protein. Your body is breaking that food down and then creating the proteins that you need. So it doesn't matter if it's coming from meat or if it's coming. Well, it matters, but I'm saying you can get all the proteins you need. You can get from plant-based.
Exactly. And again, let's look at the biggest terrestrial animal on the planet. An elephant is a vegan. Uh-huh. Mountain gorilla, vegan. Cows are vegan. Other ungulates, giraffe, these are all vegan.
But they have to eat
from the plant.
But they have to eat all day. They never stop eating. That's what people say. They eat all day. They can't ever stop. So that's why, again, we can't keep eating all day long, eating vegetables.
Well, that's a crock too, because I'm a vegan and I don't eat all day long.
Right.
Yeah. And also you have to consider, and we mentioned this before, you have to consider that, a silverback gorilla is 450 pounds. We're not. So If you scale it, so on average, a silverback gorilla will eat anywhere between 5 and 6 browse, about 5-6 hours a day. So a quarter of the day. So we eat maybe but we're like maybe a third of the weight on average of a 450 pound silverback gorilla. So, cut that by a third, and do we eat 2 hours a day? We're doing something, probably feeding our faces for that amount of time per day, whether we're grazing or snacking. But also you have to consider the quality of what they're eating. They're eating a lot of bamboo shit. They're eating a lot of nutrient poor things, where our whole food system has been a human invention that has selected for these vegetables, broccoli and all these kinds of things, beets or whatever it is, to be really nutrient dense. So for example, you're not feeding, in a zoo, a silverback gorilla, they're not eating for 6 hours a day. They're eating about what we eat a day, but they're eating what we eat.
Right. They're eating
for really huge nutrient dense fruits and vegetables. And they're just eating leaves and stuff like that aren't as calorically dense or nutrient dense, not like our food supply, again, which is a human invention, unless you're harvesting.
Right.
Yeah. And also, and they're grazers. So they're eating all day. They don't just, for example, we'll go back to the cultural thing, other cultures will sit around and actually enjoy dinner and lunch for over an hour. And we'll stuff our faces full in our car driving to work. Or woof down something. We only got a half hour for lunch. So you're like we're jamming food into our heads instead of sitting there and actually eating over a period of time, which is more healthy, because then you tend not to overeat as well. So does that make sense to there's all these factors of while they're eating longer, other cultures that I've been around and been shared, broken bread with, take way longer to eat, whether it's lunch or dinner. They're not like in this big old rush to get back to work and get docked because I took, 31 minutes instead of a half an hour. So all this, once you scale it using all these kinds of variables of weight and how they eat and what they're eating, it's really a push.
Right. So it's more of people have been kind of brainwashed into thinking you got to have these proteins. You got to have this protein, especially when it comes to people that are, going to the gym or bodybuilders and stuff like that. But even those, that documentary of The Game Changer, the guy that was the world's strongest man and the weightlifter and the woman in the Olympics. All vegans.
Yeah, world's strongest man 6 times was a vegan. Our heavyweight weightlifter was a vegan in the Olympics a couple Olympiads ago. Tell those people where they're getting the protein from.
Right.
Well, the whole thing is that our RDA is all screwed up and was based on data that was not scientifically calculated, but observational. And it was wrong. And one of those aspects was, because our muscles are made of protein, we need protein. Not knowing that our bodies are very efficient at when we're breaking down proteins for any reason, we're using our muscles and we're tearing our muscles apart, we actually recycle all of those amino acids. And so the question of where you get your protein from is really a bad question, because the answer is you. Our own bodies make the proteins that we need.
Okay.
So we consume, and all the amino acids exist in plants. So we consume, whether we're eating meat or plants, there's proteins in those. And then what our body will do, and all proteins are made up of amino acids, they'll break it down into amino acids and then reconstruct the proteins that our bodies actually need at that time, whether it's an enzyme, a structural protein, or what have you. And what protein is really a poor, everyone thinks we need protein for energy, and that is really wrong. What we need for energy is carbohydrates. Every cell on this planet is evolved to use carbohydrates as an energy source, not protein. Protein's actually inefficient, and it's not a good source of energy. All cells use carbohydrates. We can use proteins and we can use fats, but there are byproducts from fats in particular that are not really good in our bodies. They're actually ketones are very toxic in our bodies.
There was the woman that you were telling me about that was the endurance runner, the Appalachian Trail.
Oh yeah, it's a guy.
Oh, it's a guy.
It's a guy. So thanks for bringing that up. So there are people who only eat fruit, and that's it. And what we know is fruit doesn't have a lot of protein in it. They do have amino acids in them, but not a lot of proteins in them. And these people have no problem maintaining their weight, and this particular runner you're talking about is one of the world's best ultra endurance runners, has the Appalachian Trail record for completing the Appalachian Trail in the least amount of time. Does 100-mile runs all the time, does the New York Marathon and comes like top 20. And he's one of the best ultra endurance runners. And me personally, I'm an ultra endurance athlete, or used to be, and competed for years, first on a vegetarian diet and then on a vegan diet, and trained hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours a week with no problem maintaining weight, building muscle, improving. And I still think I have my best race in me, even though I haven't really trained that hard in the last couple of years, all on a vegan diet. I don't worry about a damn thing I eat. Nothing. I don't count a calorie. I don't worry if I get enough protein. Nothing. I just eat. Good. Tons of vegetables, lots of beans too. I love lentils and other kinds of beans. Yeah. Bread. I don't give a shit. I just eat. And as long as it's not coming from an animal, I'm eating it.
Got it.
And I've never had an issue, and that goes with carbohydrates too. When we consume carbohydrates, there's populations on the world. One of them is these blue zones. In Okinawa, only 7% of their calories come from protein, while here it's almost 40%, and mostly from animal products. And where has that gotten us? Like if we're supposed to be the healthiest, we're supposed to have the healthiest diet here, the American diet, and we need meat to eat and livestock products to eat and all this kind of stuff, to keep us healthy. Why are we the one of the sickest countries on the planet? if our diet is so good.
Right.
And you can't argue that like, oh, it's smoking anymore, because little to no people smoke percentage wise.
And I know that going from, when I was doing more protein in my diet, or, meat, when I was doing more meat, and I was staying away from carbohydrates, and my body would wind up craving carbohydrates. And I would be like, I gotta have some pasta, man. I'm just dying for some, like my body just knew.
Well, there's a reason for that. There's a reason for that. And so why all of these diets fail that are low carb diets, like Atkins, the what's that one? Paleo, the keto diet. Paleo. Why they all fail is because our primary energy source for every single cell on the planet is evolved to use carbohydrates. Now, we have stores of carbohydrates in our bodies, so the carbohydrates are going to be tapped first, are those floating around our bloodstream. And then we start, if we're doing, prolonged exercise without consuming anything to, maintain our blood carbohydrate level, they'll kick in. Our muscles store glycogen, which is basically starch, the equivalent, the analog of starch, like in a plant, like in a potato. So that glycogen is a huge carbohydrate store, and we'll keep doing it. If you're on a consistent high protein, low carb diet, basically what you're losing in weight is water and the glycogen that's stored in your muscles, because our cells are craving carbohydrates. And so why that diet cannot be maintained is exactly what you said. People, you will literally go into a state of starvation without carbohydrates. And then what you'll end up doing is so you can't maintain that high protein diet or that high animal protein diet. You will start, eventually you'll crack, because all the nausea, for example, the bad breath, like the constipation, like your body's literally, and what Atkins did in his second wave of this like low carb diet phase, Atkins started selling products to counteract all of the ill effects from being on a high animal protein diet and a low carbohydrate diet. Yeah.
So what is the, just real quick, what's the best carb food to eat? Plant-based.
So when I'm talking about carbs, I'm not talking about just like, hey, stuff your face with like pop. We're from the Midwest, so we say pop and like white bread. I'm not advocating that in corn chips. I'm for like all the colors you find in the produce section, right? That's what I'm advocating for. And I'm saying that, like, I eat pasta. I eat a shit ton of pasta, but I always got pigs on it, or a salad, or beans, or lambic, and all this great stuff. And I eat a lot of fruit too, so all of that is carbohydrate. And so
you're saying that you don't have one particular thing that you would say, this is the best carb out there to go, or this family, this group.
We know the brassicaceae is really good. So what we're talking about is cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, kohlrabi, broccoli. Right. All of those things are really intensely good for you.
Okay.
Loaded with antioxidants. Really, the phytochemistry is fantastic. And they're always on the list of every book that comes out, like How to Live to 100, how to avoid illness and all this kind of stuff. They're always on the list. They have a lot of very good compounds, phytochemistry in them that are really good for your body. Kale is one of them as well. That's a brassica as well. But a variety. I try to get different colors, different sizes, shapes, different flavors. And if you know how to cook, like I do, it all tastes good. Even raw. I love just mowing down raw stuff all the time.
I wanted to talk about, me and Foo were having a discussion about the planet and man and being symbiotic. And basically what he was suggesting, and I thought, well, Brother Anthony might be able to explain this or have a better idea. As far as the human beings on the planet are the virus, and the planet Earth is just trying to, in order to survive, it's just going to kill us off, and then we'll go on its merry way. Is that too much of a generalization? Or
no, actually, it's actually a scientific hypothesis called the Gaia hypothesis. That's Gaia, Gaia, Gaia.
Gaia. Okay.
That the whole planet is an interdependent functioning system that was, before humans started overrunning the planet, in equilibrium, in homeostasis, we'd call it. So in harmony, where one thing wasn't getting too big, or whatever, to maintain all of the living species and to maintain the environment, to filter the air, to filter the water, everything had a function to maintain the whole planet and all of these interconnected systems within a region and between regions. So that came out in the early 70s, the Gaia hypothesis by James Lovelock and Lynn Margulis. And it was kind of laughed at initially, but gained traction the last 20, 30 years or so because of the obvious evidence that says the Earth really is one interconnected system. So we need all of these species on the planet in order to survive. We are just one part of that system. But unfortunately, as well, you just mentioned, we're kind of like a virus. I don't know if we're like a virus or something that's just not quite like a virus. Not sure what we are. We're like a chainsaw run amok. So we're turning the planet into a wasteland is what we've done. And we can't live and we won't be able to live without all of the interconnected species and abiotic parts of the planet. If they're not healthy, we will indeed go with it. We'll get flushed as well. So, and if we take a look, what's going on and why are, we're just consuming and consuming and consuming. And literally we've turned the planet into a global grazing ground for livestock. And I know, kind of sound like a broken record, always going to the livestock industry, but we know that 80% of the rainforest has been completely razed because of livestock and growing grains to feed that livestock.
That's crazy.
Over 50% of the planet, the terra firma of the planet, is only for livestock, grazing and producing feed for livestock. You think all that corn you drive through in the Midwest is for like human consumption? No, it's for livestock consumption. All of it. A very small percentage goes directly into feeding humans. And yes, we make, we have corn oil, and corn is basically in everything, as an additive. We get right. But that's very little percentage relative to what we actually feed to livestock. And there's a statistic that'll blow you away. It's blown me away. Like 2,000 years ago, humans and livestock were less than 1% of mammalian biomass. Now they're over 96% of mammals. Of the biomass on the planet is basically cows and humans and pigs, and that's it. 96% of the biomass of mammals is humans, cows, and pigs. So we basically have turned every other species that's a mammal on this planet into cows and pigs. And if you want to look at it for all animal species, it's somewhere around 70-75%. So we basically have turned the world into cows. All this biodiversity we've turned into cows and pigs and humans that have health problems from eating cows and pigs. And really, who eats the cows and pigs? Mostly industrialized countries. The billion people out of the 8 billion people on the planet that live in industrialized countries eat far and away the majority of the livestock produced on the planet or livestock products. Almost all indigenous or all indigenous cultures and all developing world cultures, which are the majority of the people on the planet, eat a plant-based diet, eat very, very little livestock. You do have outliers, the Inuit, and like the Maasai on the African plains. So, but there's a few outliers out there, or a few cultures that solely kind of eat animal products. Most everybody else on the planet eats.
And do you, because getting that message out, because people will say, well, I have to have my steak. Oh, I have to eat my hamburgers. I've got to have my ribs. Right. It's choice. However, it's not. And everybody gets so defensive about it. I didn't. I was like, well, okay, yeah, I'm doing it for the health reasons. If it's healthier to be on plants, that's what I'm doing. But if you go to a human being, a normal human being, you go.
A couple of years ago, I was having a discussion with some ladies that were actually teachers. It was a Earth Week thing. Sorry to cut you off with this short story. And it was during Earth Week, and we were having this discussion. And I said I was a vegan. And they said, that's great. And this guy behind me goes, no, it's not. It's normal. It's not great for me. It's just my everyday life.
Right.
I don't think I'm doing anything special.
Yeah.
I'm I've made my choices.
Right.
And so finish your question. So people say they have to eat ribs, or they have to have bacon.
Yeah, they've got to have those things.
Let's be very clear, though. They don't have to.
I'm trying to work on the messaging here for saving the planet.
Okay.
So you have to ask the person, are you pro destroying the planet? And what would you say? Most people would say, of course not. I would like to save the planet. Okay. Well, do you realize that because you're making these choices of saying, I have to eat meat, I have to have steak, I have to have bacon, that you're destroying the planet? You're not only destroying it, you may not see it in your lifetime, but if you have kids or your kids have kids, your grandchildren, great-grandchildren may not be able to continue living here.
Yeah. And so I want to point out first, because I'm sure people will point this out, everything we eat destroys the planet in some way. So even if you're a vegan, there's a trade-off, right? Okay. So what's being produced when I'm eating used to be a wildland, but there are better choices as far as ecological impact and species diversity impact. So that really, I think, is where you're going with it. And we do know that the majority of the planet and environmental degradation, so there's basically drilling and mining and mostly livestock, has taken the biggest toll on the planet, but also the atmosphere as well, with greenhouse gas emissions and so on. So I understand your question. So everything has an impact. And I taught courses for years on food choice and environmental impact. Like, what does it mean to eat a potato relative to a steak, and how much land it takes to feed a person that eats meat, which is anywhere between 2.5 to 4 acres of land, to feed a vegan, which is about not even a 1/4 acre of land per year. So right. These are the kinds of impacts. And we know these data are very clear. So I'll give you a couple of numbers here. 83% of all agriculture and grazing land only supplies 17% of the caloric intake of humanity. 83% of that land is used for rangeland and feeding livestock. Only provides 17% of the caloric intake. That means 17% of the land supplies 83% of the calories for humanity. You want me to say that again? 83% of all ag land and rangeland is to produce livestock. That only supplies 17% of the calories for humanity. The rest of the 17% of agricultural land supplies that's all plants, supplies 83% of the caloric intake of humanity. If for some magical reason, everybody on the planet went at least plant-based, not even vegan, we can take about 75% of the existing agricultural land out of agricultural purposes and convert it back into wildlands for other species. We would only need about 1/4 of our current agricultural land right now to produce. If everyone went at least plant-based, not necessarily vegan, right, we can take all of that land out of agriculture. So over 50% of the world would go back into wildlands.
And that's the message that needs to get out there that people aren't aware of. It's all about education and not being ignorant of what it's really about.
Yeah, it's a pretty powerful statistic.
Yeah. Well, even some of the documentaries that are out there that you see when you see this latest one, You Are What You Eat, which is on Netflix, some of the stuff that they were showing with the agriculture, with the pig farms, the chicken farms, the cows. And it was pretty disgusting. And you see that, and, people, they don't want to see that. They don't want to see how the sausage is made. But when you see that, you're going, well, yeah, I want to go and switch.
The highest turnover rate, drug, alcohol addiction profession is people who work in slaughterhouses of any industry.
I believe it, because there was one dude that was on there and he had a whole chicken farm and he wound up was renting that out, and he went and got rid of that and he turned it into, now all those chicken coops, he grows mushrooms.
Nice. I'm going to make another connection here. So if only 17% of our farmland is providing 83% of the calories, where is most of our protein coming from? to feed the world. Remember, really only industrialized countries are consuming huge quantities of meat. The protein is coming from the plants that people are eating.
Right.
Right. Since 17% is plants, providing 83% of the calories, the majority of the protein comes from plants for humanity. And really, this question in our society of protein, we need to eat animals. Almost 38% of human beings in this country are obese.
Right.
You find people wasting away in this country. Do you find people wasting away in the world anymore? No, it's about caloric intake. And if you get enough calories, you're getting enough protein. There's never been a protein deficient human on the planet unless they're calorically deficient, unless they're not getting enough calories. Like you see those late night commercials we used to watch with Sally Struthers or whatever, people in Ethiopia or sub-Saharan Africa, and kids wasting away. Is anyone wasting away in the United States? So the fucking, like, how much protein we need in our diet is purely academic. It's a fucking ridiculous question. Everyone gets enough protein. Otherwise, why? Because nobody is wasting away. Right. Even like I said, like I do a lot of working out, all this kind of stuff. I'm never wasting away. I haven't changed my weight since I graduated high school, for Christ's sake. And so I just wanted to make that connection that the majority of the protein people get on the planet and calories get on the planet are from plants. And we don't have a big, huge wasting away problem on the planet anymore. Matter of fact, there's way more obese people on the planet than people who are undernourished or starving on the planet or chronically hungry on the planet.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. If you go onto YouTube and you just do a Google search for Disneyland home movies, 1970s, and you see in those videos from the 70s, there's no obesity in the 70s.
Right.
And then compared to today. And it wasn't until, all the processed foods start coming in and.
Right. Yeah. And again, I'm not advocating at all like eating processed foods, but you're right. Processed foods became part of the problem when people started saying eat more lean meat. And so a low fat diet never actually occurred in this country, just so we're aware of that. Everyone thinks like during the 70s, like what you pointed out, like we went all low fat diet, and that never happened.
Right. Fat free.
But because what happened was people just kept their diet and thought the calories were coming from like fatty desserts, whipped cream and cakes and stuff like that, and started eating more fat processed calories, more calories.
The dog agrees.
Easy to Mary. So you could be quiet too. So relative to 50 years ago, we eat over 600 more calories in our diet in the United States.
A day? 600 more calories a day.
Pacino. So yes, we eat 600 more calories today on average.
Today or a day?
Per day.
Per day. We eat 600 more calories than we need to.
We eat, yes. Then relative to 50 years ago, we're eating over 600 more calories per day. And we're consuming 75% of the population consumes more calories per day than the USDA recommends.
Okay.
And there's a reason for that, because people are eating, and again, when we eat animal products, we're eating calorically dense products that are really nutritionally poor. There's nothing we get out of livestock products that we can't get out of vegetables, fruits and vegetables, including calories. But livestock products are calorically dense. So we are able to eat more of them and hence pack in more calories. And also our bodies don't process livestock products the same way that our bodies will process vegetable products and fruit. So there's a big difference with that. But what we should do is return to the environmental impact, not right now, but in the future. We should we should do that. And I think a take home message here is be happy. Choose your happiness.
Right. Yeah.
We don't, if I was benevolent dictator of this country, I would mandatorily have at high school age students go spend at least 6 months somewhere in another part of the world or another culture within our United States, experiencing how other people live and how in some sort of field service, though, whether it's environmental field service, ecological field service, humanitarian field service, to learn that everything we do in this country is not the end all. How we go about things in this country is not the end all. And people elsewhere have solutions as well. And so that's one, I think, take home message. And another one is, you pointed out, you are what you eat. Like if you eat, there's no evidence that suggests there's no physiology in our body, including our anatomy, our molars and how we process food that says animal products are necessary or requisite to be healthy. Nothing. As a matter of fact, again, it's actually quite unhealthy. And we can measure after eating meat once the inflammatory response in our bodies that does not occur eating any kind of fruits or vegetables.
Right. I mean, you just kind of go full circle back to the Olympian athlete and the runner and the weightlifter, all these guys that are super strong and are all plant-based, and they're not eating meat. So that
I have almost 70 ultra endurance events under my belt.
There you go.
I've ridden I've done almost 24-hour solo mountain bike events, close to 30 or 35 12-hour events, 100-milers. I've done 7-day adventure races.
And no meat. So there you go. Listen to that.
You'll find.
The proof is in the pudding, as they say.
But I do, just like you mentioned, I do follow my cravings.
Right.
The only time I'll ever drink pop, like a Sprite or something, is like I'll finish an event and go, my God, I know my body's dying for carbohydrates. Like I've zapped out my stores and I just want to refill it. And so that sweetness and just piling in just sugar calories sounds good.
Right.
I'll chug a couple cans of that. And there goes that craving.
All right. Very good. Well,
cool.
Let's wrap it up. Yeah, let's when you come back from Africa, we'll do another discussion. We'll do another episode, and we can find out if you got to see your baby elephants and all your other babies, and we'll discuss your trip and anything else you want to. So,
absolutely.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you again. I love it.
Absolutely. Appreciate you sharing your knowledge and sharing your time.
Talk about the Gaia hypothesis again, too. It's really awesome.
The what?
The Gaia hypothesis.
Okay.
It's pretty fun to talk about.
All right. Sounds good. Anything you want to talk about? All right. So thank you, everybody. Peace. Ciao.
Peace out.